This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon Radio.
Welcome to the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon Radio, and I have a packed show for you this week. But my 3 random facts, which I said I would deliver every week, this week is I delivered a baby when I was 18. Not my own, obviously, but I was on my own. So that was quite a story. So one day I might regale you of that story. But that was growing up in Zimbabwe, and that's how things were. So that's a random fact. I have 3 brothers and 1 sister, and I definitely suffer from eldest daughter syndrome. Again, that's something we can talk about another time. It's a really interesting thing. I didn't even know it was a thing. So we'll talk about that another time. But 3 random facts about me. As I say, on today's packed show, I'm going to be offering a book review, talk about animal print, my thoughts on animal print, because that's what I'm wearing today. The latest Disney movie, Mufasa, The Lion King, and also those Egypts on The Apprentice. Honestly, I don't even know what to say. And the second hour, I'm going to be talking to my PT, Joe Mara, about nutrition. And this is a huge subject. I'm very much looking forward to getting my teeth into that, no pun intended. But for the first segment, I'm going to talk about animal print. Animal print has been around for about 10 years. And it used to have really, really negative connotations. It had sort of the barmaid, Coronation Street kind of connotations. And when I first sort of got back into sort of fashion properly, I don't know, about 8 or 9 years ago, I was very sniffy about it. I thought I will never, ever, ever wear animal print, but I absolutely love it. And animal print is great because we don't have those negative barmaid connotations anymore. Anybody can wear animal print, and you can wear lots of different colours as well. I mean, I'm wearing the traditional one today, and this dress I've had for 6 years. It's a Somerset dress by Alice Temperley, and it's a dress that every time I bring it up, people just say, "Oh, I love your dress," and it's a really, really comfortable dress. It's a little bit tighter than it used to be, so now I'm wearing it with a roll neck underneath for the purposes of TV, but just about layering it. So it's about giving life to your wardrobe. And I did talk last week about wardrobe weeding. And this is a great way of breathing new life into an old item, because as I say, it doesn't quite do up anymore. So it's still a lovely dress. I don't want to get rid of it. But animal print is in every fashionista's wardrobe, and it's a great neutral. It goes with everything. It looks particularly amazing with red. So I will always wear a red lipstick when I wear animal print. I absolutely love it though. But if you're a little bit scared, and I see, when I see my customers who come and see me, and I say, what are your thoughts on animal print? It's very Marmite. You either love it or you hate it. But if you want to be a little bit cutting edge and you do want to try it, but you're a little bit scared and you don't want to go for the whole dress like I've gone for, you can maybe try it in a belt, or the lining of a coat, which, obviously when you take your coat off, you can just see it, a bag, or some boots, or, some slingbacks. So you can have your little nod to animal print. I think it looks really, really stylish. It looks, as I say, it looks great with red, but it looks fantastic with black. And as I say, I've layered it today. So if you are wondering what's on trend this season, animal print is always there. As I say, it's a perennial. So yeah, so that's my fashion top tip of the week. So I'm going to do a little bit of a book review, and it's quite an unusual book, actually. This is the Booker Prize winner 2024. It's called Orbital by Samantha Harvey. And the premise is 6 astronauts rotate in their spacecraft above Earth, where they're there to collect data and observe. I think personally it's my idea of hell. I would be absolutely terrified, but these people have obviously, as astronauts and cosmonauts, because there's 2 Russian astronauts there who are known as cosmonauts. I'm not quite sure why, but they're there to sort of collect data, and they're up there for quite a long time, and it's about their journey sort of over planet Earth and all the different countries, and it's quite interesting, and you are able to sort of visualize what it must be like. And there's a typhoon in the Philippines, and they're able to sort of send the information down to sort of the Met Office, and sort of warn people that this is happening. But I think it's more about their personal lives and how they're living in this very unreal existence, how they sort of sleep standing up, and they eat standing up, and go to the loo standing up, and it's very, very bizarre. And the fact that gravity takes its toll on their bodies, and how their muscles atrophy, which is why they have to do a lot of exercise in space. So I did not know that. So it was quite an interesting read. I didn't find it an easy read, but it was an interesting read, if that makes sense. But one of the astronauts' mothers dies, and it's about how she's trying to cope with that grief and deal with that grief, to know that she can't go back. It's not like being in another country. You can just go back, and you can arrange a funeral or whatever. There's nothing she can do, and they're floating up in the in the in space, and her mother's died, and that really sort of hit home. Was I think I cannot imagine what that must be like. So trying to process your grief with these people that you're sharing the spacecraft with, they're just colleagues really, so it's a very intimate thing. But yeah, it was an interesting read actually, and it was sort of about the emotional and physical distance from planet Earth, and it's an interesting concept, but I did find it quite wordy and I couldn't really resonate with the characters. But it is a nice short read, so if you're looking for a sort of a nice short read, it's a mere sort of 130 odd pages, so it was quite a quick read, and if you do like space and anything sort of space wise, and it is an interesting read because there's lots of sort of planet referral as well. So this is Orbital by Samantha Harvey, and yes, this is from Waterstones in Milton Keynes, and yeah, an interesting read, and I'm really enjoying working with Waterstones because it's like being in a book club. You're kind of, I don't like to use the word forced, but you're kind of encouraged to read books that you wouldn't normally read. And I think it's very easy to get stuck in a little bit of a book rut, like one can get stuck in a style rut and just read the same things over and over again, because my default is kind of psychological drama and they all become very, very samey. So it's very good that I've read something different. So yeah, so that is Orbital by Samantha Harvey. So next I want to talk about Mufasa, which I went to see at Cineworld yesterday, and it was so lovely. I've wanted to see it for a while, but just one of those things I haven't got around to. But I took I took my eldest son to see The Lion King at the theatre in the West End years and years and years ago. And as someone who grew up in Africa, I was sceptical that I was going to feel that sort of Africanness, I suppose, for want of a better description. But it's an extraordinary show, and if you've not seen it, it's probably one of the best things in the West End. It's been going for probably about 20, 30 years now, I reckon. But the beginning scene in The Lion King is when you see the animals coming over the plain, and they're puppets, but it's incredibly lifelike. And I remember the hairs on the back of my neck just standing up and just thinking, oh my God, I just feel like I'm in Africa again. It's amazing. And it's the same puppeteers who do War Horse. So it's the attention to detail is extraordinary. This is the prequel. It's a live action prequel to The Lion King, so Mufasa. So I hadn't seen the live action movie, to be honest with you. And I don't know what I was expecting. I don't think I've seen live action before. I was thinking it was going to be animation, which I don't really like, but it's incredible. If you've never seen live action, it's amazing. The attention to detail is extraordinary. Like the stripes on the zebras, or the expression on the lions' faces, or the sort of the marks on the giraffes. Just incredible. And you just feel like you're in the plains of Africa. And obviously you've got surround sound. So the music, which is written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, is amazing. So it's got that little Hamilton vibe about it, which I love, but it's still got that sort of Elton John, Tim Rice feel as well. So it stayed true to the original, but it's also got that quirky sort of slightly Hamiltonish sound as well, which I really, really love. It's amazing. It's a lovely, lovely film. I mean, it's good versus evil. It's good lion versus bad lion, and obviously, as in all Disney films, good triumphs over evil. But it's a wonderful, wonderful film, and it's suitable for the whole family. It's voiced by Beyonce and also the late James Earl Jones, who unfortunately died before filming was finished, and it's dedicated to him, and that was very moving as well. But it's a wonderful, wonderful family film, and Mufasa is on at Cineworld Milton Keynes for another couple of weeks. Don't miss it.
This is the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show.
Welcome back to the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show here on the New Horizon Radio in Milton Keynes, and I'm delighted in week 2 to be joined by Jo Mara. Hello, Jo.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Oh, we're so happy to have you back. We had such fun last week, didn't we?
We did.
So Jo is a PT based in Milton Keynes, and she's my PT, has been for a couple of years now, on and off. Works with clients of all ages, abilities, lifestyles to help them achieve their fitness goals. She's a qualified group fitness instructor, nutrition coach, and run leader of England Athletics. And what I wanted to ask you, and I forgot to ask you last week, when I was listening back, you said that before you did this, you had a full-time job.
I did, yeah.
I'm just throwing you under the bus here. I'm saying, what did you do before you became a PT?
So before, I was working for a branch of the Department of Health in London, central London, working long hours, working a lot with government and parliament, and it was really full on. And I qualified as an instructor years and years ago, and I used to teach in the evenings, and I had to take a step back because one of my kids needed me to be at home a bit more. And I thought, actually, you know what? It would be lovely to see if I can do more on the fitness side. And having had that experience of working full on, coming home, sorting the kids, then going back to work, doing more, you know what it's like, and then get up and do the whole thing again. I just thought, if I can help people to carve out for themselves a little bit of time to focus on what will matter to them, then that would be absolutely fabulous. And it's been such a rewarding experience over the last 7 years. So really, that's kind of been my motivation for doing it. And you never know, life throws these things at you, doesn't it? And life puts you into circumstances where sometimes you get a chance to have a second career or do something differently. But all the life that's come before it really helps inform why you do the way why you coach or why you train people the way you train them, because you understand, a little bit more about what they're doing and where they're coming from.
Oh, that makes sense now. Yeah, because as we talked last week about prioritizing, we struggle with that word, your fitness and carving out time and say, you've been there, done that. And I think it's very difficult for women to have it all. Have the career, high-flying career, possibly commuting to London and small children, and it's very difficult. Something's got to give, and usually it can be your health or your physical health as well, as well as your mental well-being. So the corporate sector's loss is our game.
Well, that's lovely. Yeah, and just to say, not everyone is fortunate enough to have the support structure to be able to say, I'm not going to need to go and work full time in that job because I need to pay my bills and everything else. And I do understand that fully, but I do also think that once you have found you can carve out a bit of time for yourself, you don't want to give it up. And I really think that clients I work with, they've really benefited from just making that time for themselves and focusing on their health and fitness.
Oh, that's wonderful. So today we've got lots to talk about, a lot juicy subject of not fitness, nutrition. This is a big subject. So let's get cracking. So I think the most important thing, I think you say, is to make a plan, have a goal, because otherwise it's a bit airy-fairy. It's like, well, I want to be a size 10, and if you're size 16, maybe that's not achievable or attainable. So I think about having something that's realistic, and that is a proper goal in mind. Would you agree that that's your number one priority?
Yeah, absolutely, because it's not easy. If whatever your goal is, if changing the way you eat is part of getting that goal, it's not an easy thing just to say day one, I know what I'm doing, I know where I'm going, I know how I'm going to measure it. And people have different goals. So like you say there, it could be weight loss, it could be maintaining your weight at a certain level, it could be looking at improving the quality of your nutrition, it could be that you're finding, you've slipped into a pattern of eating that isn't working for you, whether it's snacking or eating at times that don't work for your sleep and your work pattern. So have that goal in mind. Why am I looking to make changes to my nutrition? And once you've got that goal in mind, then have a really honest look at how are you eating at the moment, and what is your nutrition like. And there's no simple way of doing that other than just to have a little, a tracking of that. Now, for some people, as we, tracking what you eat can be tricky because it exerts a certain amount of control required to make sure you're doing that. And I know we're going to go on and talk about other ways of tracking what you're eating, but just being honest with what am I currently doing? No judgment, that's how it is. And then from there, you can kind of work out what support might I need to go from where I am now to where I want to be. And that's where you start to fill in the gaps.
I think you're right, as I say, because if you don't have that focus, it's just too blur. The lines are too blurred, and I think for me personally, having a goal is really, really important. Having a focus, but I think it's also good to be open-minded and not just say it's just for that, because if you don't do that, then you can end up feeling disenchanted. So I think it's as you say, your approach has always been sort of quite holistic, and so looking at the whole thing. It's not just about food, it's not just about fitness. The two need to go together, and as we said last week, you cannot art train a bad diet, 100%, and now I'm sort of hitting near a 60. That is 100% true. Whereas 10 years ago, I kind of could, and I know that's going against all the science, but 10 years ago, as long as I exercised, I could eat what I wanted. That is not the case now.
Yeah, and I think what we are realising as well now is increasingly the quality of what we eat makes a huge difference as well to our nutrition, but just to our well-being, to how we feel about ourselves, how healthy we feel, how good we feel about getting on with our day and with our fitness goals. So yeah, quality of nutrition as well as actual what you're eating, how you're eating, and where you want to be make a big difference.
Absolutely. We were talking about tracking, and we were talking before the break about accountability and writing things down. So for you and I, it's an interesting journey, and I think probably I've presented quite a challenge, but for me, tracking doesn't work. I used to send you pictures of what I'd eaten, and sometimes it helped, and it is quite good to see, because you don't realize what you're eating in a day. You might think, oh, well, I only ate that, but actually when you send pictures to someone, it's quite an eye-opening thing. Actually, oh my God, I actually ate all that. That's a lot of pictures. Or you can use MyFitnessPal or something like that. For me personally, and as you know, we've been through this together, and our journey's been ongoing for sort of 18 months now. I find that really triggering as someone who has had an eating disorder, which is, I don't think one ever recovers totally from an eating disorder, because that food noise is kind of still going on a little bit in one's head. But for me, tracking makes it all about the calories, all about the numbers, and it works. There's absolutely no doubt about it. For some people it works, and it has worked for me in the past, but I find it too triggering and unsustainable. So we've reached a compromise, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, and I think that's where the support element comes in again, like we were talking about with the exercise. Sometimes if people say, well, this is the way you need to do it, and it's not working for you, you don't know what else is out there as an approach. And so as a nutrition coach, it's not about telling you what you should be eating. It's about almost a trial and error sometimes to work through different approaches until you find something that does really work for you. Ultimately, it's about being honest about what you're eating. So standing back and having a look at that. Now, however you want to do that, as you say, if you don't want to be weighing stuff and tracking it and writing it all down, it might be that you take some photos, or it might just be that you're just a little bit more mindful about what is going on your plate, particularly if you're looking to improve the quality of your nutrition. And again, we'll probably come on to this around, your processed food element and so forth, and the kind of balance that you're getting in your diet. But there does need to be, as part of your plan, you do need to be able to take stock and say, where am I now? And then how do I manage that transition to whatever change in my nutrition I want to have? And maybe I need some support to get there. It's no surprise that some of the, let's not name them, but really big slimming support groups out there do so well, because sometimes people just need to show up somewhere every week with a group of people and really benefit from the support that gives them for the rest of the week, then to be motivated to keep going with whatever change they're making. That doesn't work for everybody too. There are lots of online apps and other things that we both know about that can help you as well, whether it's just to be more mindful, whether it's to create a different relationship with what you're eating. So it just depends. There are lots of different ways that you can go about, taking stock and measuring, without it being something that becomes a negative association, because once you start, as you said, in that kind of mindset, it's very difficult to remain motivated or for it not to become all consuming. And having some support and putting it in the round and getting perspective, and I know we'll come on to that, creating flexibility and getting a balance over the week, all those sorts of things somebody can help you with, and having support, even if it's somebody else in the house just doing it with you, or helping out and supporting and talking to you, it really makes a difference. But it's about working out what works for you, and if it doesn't work, don't worry about it. There are other ways that you can go about doing it.
Absolutely. I mean, one size literally does not fit all.
Correct.
Yeah. And I think, the slimming clubs that we're sort of talking to, naming no names, but I've done all that, and I found it, I really, really hated every second of it. I really did. I found it, the weekly weigh-ins, humiliating. I found the fact that having to step on a scale in front of everybody, I mean, people aren't looking at your weight, but it's like that weight determines how you're going to feel for the rest of the week. And as we know, particularly with women, our weight does fluctuate. There's water retention, hormones. There's so many different reasons, and the fact that we are sort of judged and we are almost determined and by that number, I find it's not dealing with the root of the problem. So why are we overweight? The reason we're overweight is because we're consuming too much food. We know that, and it's calories in versus output and all that. So we know, everybody knows that's basic common sense. But that whole thing about the weekly weigh-in, for me, is not sustainable. Yes, it worked. but I couldn't. When I went back to eating normally, I couldn't sustain it.
Yeah.
And I feel quite angry towards some of the slimming clubs, because I do feel like they obviously it's a commercial venture, but there's no duty of care towards their customers, because they're happy to take the money and sell them the processed bars every week, because that's how they make the money. But they're not taking into account, everybody's different.
Yeah.
And, pound on a pound off. And I actually watched Fat Friends, the Kay Mellor documentary, which is 20 years old, a couple of weeks ago when I was off. And gosh, nothing's changed. I mean, it was insightful, and it was about the camaraderie that you have in there. You're going to Fat Club and stuff like that, and you can make light of it. But actually, it's a serious subject, and it's not for me. And I think that's why slimming clubs keep going, is because long-term success is not guaranteed, and that's how they keep making the money, because people just have to keep going back. And as a someone who is passionate about nutrition, that must frustrate you a little bit when you see that and you think, this is not right.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that word used about sustainable. And I think ultimately, when you meet a goal, particularly if it's in the space of weight loss, you've met the goal, and great. And then what do you do after that? What you really want to be doing is maintaining that weight loss then, in a positive, healthy way that fuels your day-to-day and the exercise you want to do. So it's much more about building nutrition for the rest of your life than it is simply doing something to reach that goal and then you're on your own. And I think the support, as you say, comes in the form of, you've met your goal, well done you, and not necessarily in the how do you transition back to normal life, let's say, where you're not going to those support groups every week. You need to work independently now to maintain that for yourself, and you need to find a way that's sustainable, because otherwise, as you say, you tend to find you go backwards. So ultimately, has it been successful? Because if you're going backwards, then you're starting all over again, and people look back to, well, it worked for me last time, but you think, but did it work for you last time? Because you're having to do it again.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
that's the thing, isn't it? And I think you and I have spoken at length about that sustainability of your nutrition, as much as it is about your fitness and exercise, and that whole picture about where you want to be with these things for the rest of your life. So I totally agree with you on
absolutely.
that one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to talk about ultra processed food in a minute. Are we talking about this book just for the purposes of radio? This is Dr. Chris Van Tulleken's Ultra Processed People, and it's called Why Do We Eat Stuff That Isn't Food, and Why Can't We Stop? It's an extraordinary read. Not an easy read. It's quite medical and quite techy, but this book, honestly, is a game changer. It changed my life in terms of the way that I looked at food, and I'm sure as someone who's a nutritionist, this must have been really helpful for you as well.
Yeah, I actually have it on audiobook, so he's reading
probably easier,
it,
yeah.
And it's nice because you can sort of be out on a walk or whatever, and you could lose yourself entirely. I mean, I've gone off on walks and thought, actually, I don't even know where I am right now, because I'm so engrossed in what he's talking about. And it's one of those things that when he first starts to talk about it, common sense says to you, I'm not sure I'll get my head around this, how is this? But he explains in such a clear way that you think, my goodness, why did we not know this before about what ultra-processed food does to us? And then you start to understand why it's as addictive as it is, why we eat it as we do, and actually makes it not necessarily easier, but clearer about how you can break that and what you can replace in your diet. And the emphasis on, I think he talks about if you look at the back of the ingredients on something, and if you have anything in there that you do not have in your store cupboard at home, chances are it's got some degree of processing, if not ultra processed. And the more on that list that you don't have, the more likely it is that and it's actually coming back to that basic idea, isn't it, of not everyone has time to make things from scratch, accepted, but if you balanced a little bit more of your whole foods with the amount of processed food we're having, we would probably all be in a sort of better place for that. So yeah,
it's a really interesting read though. For me, the first chapter blew my mind. The first chapter is on ice cream, and I have not eaten ice cream since I read it, because basic ice cream, manufactured ice cream, is slime. Fundamentally, that's what it is, which is why it tends to leave that nasty aftertaste in your mouth. When you have a really lovely ice cream from a proper Italian ice cream, like gelato, is really proper ice cream, and there's none of that aftertaste. but that again, it's how, you know, how, and this is ultra processed food has only become a thing in the last 30 years, really. And the big corporations are doing so well out of it, and they are preying on people who don't have time, and it's cheaper. So for people who are time poor and, you know, financially poor, it's easy.
Yeah.
And but it's also being educated to look at the labels. And for me, say ice cream, I wasn't a big ice cream fan, so it was not a big thing for me. But for me, as a bread addict, for instance, I love bread. And when you look at what's in what is sold as a healthy loaf, and again, that's all this misleading information or labeling by companies, healthy, organic, farm made, homemade, it's all absolute nonsense, you know. And to see that claim being made, you just think that is just a blatant lie. But we all fall for it because we think, oh, that sounds homely, that sounds good for me.
Yeah.
But when you look in the average loaf of bread, as you say, there's 20 ingredients, and that was an eye opener for me. So I've got a bread machine, and I've been quite public about my love for bread, and I, you know, I just put a bread mix in, and there's nothing in, you know, there's it's just the bread mix, and it's pure as much as it can be. But when I even sourdough is probably the best form of bread, but it's £2.50. And it's expensive. So you there's no wonder that people just buy cheap and nasty bread, because it's, you know, it's cheap.
Absolutely.
But when you look at what's in it, it's like, that is an eye opener. Yeah. And I just think reading something like this or listening to the audio has, for me, been an absolute. I'm actually shocked. I was quite evangelical about my conversion, as it were, when it happened, because I was like, oh my God, you can't, you know. I've calmed down a little bit now, because, you know, there has to be an element of processed food in everything we eat, unless you're living on a farm and you're like properly organic. But in an ideal world, I mean, nobody does that. But for me, it was like processed meats. I used to eat a lot of processed meat, and the big thing I was drinking last year was protein shakes. Oh my God. And I was thinking, why can't I lose weight? Protein shakes, yeah, they might have 25 grams of protein in them, because we need protein. But my God, there's a lot of sugar and salt in there. Yeah. And I was thinking, why is my weight not going down? Because I was, you know, ostensibly having a healthy drink or a healthy milkshake, but it wasn't healthy at all. And then again, you look at all the stabilizers and the sweetness, and say, that is absolutely disgusting. And the health industry is almost, in my opinion, as bad as the food industry in terms of, as I say, selling that dream. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I think, you know, when you look at why you take that, you wanted to up your protein for various reasons, and that's good. But when you then look at the range of food that's out there that can do that for you in your diet naturally, you know, if you want to up your protein, you're going to be looking at increasing your lean meats and your fish and your eggs and your various, and those sorts of things then suddenly start to make a really varied, nutritious and exciting diet, as opposed to just a bottle of something, as you say, which tastes pretty artificial anyway. And, you know, now I'm not saying that people don't use these things effectively for what they need to do, but I think a lot of people perhaps don't realise how much you can change what you eat from whole foods to increase your levels of protein, or whatever it is you're looking to do, reduce your fat intake or increase your fat intake, whatever it is. But because people don't have the time, as you say, and may be a little bit confused about, well, how much protein should I be having and how much is in this? And that's where it all starts to become very complicated. And like you say, the large companies then are able to come in with a more simple approach that you think, right, if I do that, that's fine, easy, I can fit that into my life. And I know you've been on a journey of just unravelling that for yourself and thinking, well, is it taking up a huge amount more of my time to change the way I eat and to change my nutrition? Or did I just need to sit down and work out a way of doing it that now means, great, I can keep going forwards now? So I think you've done a lot yourself on that journey, and I know that book is, for a lot of people, it had the same effect.
Yeah, I know, it's definitely well worth a listen or a read. But, you know, we've been through it together. We've had so many discussions on nutrition, and it's been really interesting, you know, seeking your knowledge as well, because, you know, you've got a very balanced, you know, holistic approach, you know, as someone who understands nutrition. And I guess for you as a PT, you're having to watch your clients go through their journey and find out what works for them. And that, again, it goes back to the beginning where we talked about a plan. So
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
It's interesting. What are we going to talk about next?
Probably the thing that I think is one of the most important for myself, but also for people that I've worked with, in terms of the experience I've had with people trying to make changes to their nutrition. And that's about balance and flexibility. I think that we can be very, very hard on ourselves. And, coming out of January, we've all just been through that period where we're in almost a period of denying ourselves everything after Christmas. And we talk about sustainability. And ultimately, if we're in a space where we aren't flexible enough and have enough balance in our approach to nutrition, it's really difficult to sustain it. And we've spoken at length about these sorts of things as well. There will always be special occasions. There will always be, days where you go out with friends, have treats, whatever. And if you start to label days as good days, bad days, then you can get into this space of going, well, this has been a terrible day today. And then what sometimes happens, oh, well, I might as well carry on then as I am, and worry about it tomorrow, rather than saying, actually, I know life will throw stuff in the way, and I know sometimes, I don't want to be the awkward person who doesn't join in with the evening. I might make more mindful choices than I would have done, but I'm not going to not go out and see friends or whatever. And having that built into your approach just allows you to say, great, I know I'm going out for afternoon tea on Saturday, which in fact I did, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And
Where did you go, by the way?
I went to French Affair in Stony Stratford.
Oh, isn't it lovely? Oh my
beautiful.
God, they do an amazing afternoon tea, don't they?
Beautiful. And what's the point of going if you're not going to go and enjoy it?
Yeah, that's not the time to calorie count,
That's
is it?
not the time. However, I took a week view of it all, and I knew that was coming up, so I was just a little bit more sensible throughout the week. So when I look back over the week, I've kind of, by and large,
It's kind of pro-rata eating, isn't it?
It sort of is,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit like saying, go and have that treat. It's just not an everyday thing, because if it was, one, it wouldn't be a treat, it would just be part of every day, and two, you would quickly start to move away from that plan and that goal that you'd set yourself, and then that starts to become quite negative, and you feel quite demotivated. Whereas if you go out and enjoy that time, and you go, but it's been a really good week overall, fantastic. And it's a bit like what we were talking about last week with exercise, celebrate the small wins. So when you've had a good week and you've been out and enjoyed yourself, but actually you've been pretty good the whole time, you're still on course, you're still on track, and that's something really that you should celebrate, rather than think, oh, I derailed it with that one day I went out and had too many scones or whatever it was. So I do think that's really, really important in anything you do when you come to look at changing the way that you eat, and whatever reason you're doing that for, is to just keep a bit of flexibility so that you can make it part of your life.
And it's, as you say, it's about, and also writing the small wins down. I think that makes it real. And I'm, as everyone knows, I'm a big advocate of journaling. So if you write it down, it makes it real, but it also makes you able to sort of reflect.
Yes.
So look back and think, oh, actually, I did really well. But also there's not a wagon to fall off. I hate those diet terms which are so negative. Or I'll start again on Monday, or I'll get back on the wagon. What does that even mean? And that suggests that you're demonizing food. And as you say, if you're going for afternoon tea, you enjoy it, and you, as you say, you take a balanced approach. Mm-hmm. But life is for living, and nobody ever lay in their deathbed and said, I wish I hadn't had that cake. Do they? Seriously?
Exactly.
Or I wish I'd worked harder, or all those things that we think matter, but actually in the big scheme of things, or I wish I was a size A. It doesn't matter. So it is, as you say, taking a sort of holistic approach and just saying, I'm going to enjoy it. Afternoon tea, like you, I love afternoon tea. It's my absolute favourite thing. But that is not, that you physically cannot calorie count, and why would you want to? And also when you go out socially, you don't want to be that boring person who's, I'm on a diet, or I'm not going to have that, or I've been that person. And there is nothing more boring than going out with someone who's on a diet. And I'll love it. Or that people telling you how many calories. Nobody cares. Or how many, I know sometimes I put like what I did at the gym and stuff, but nobody cares that you spent 45 minutes on the treadmill, or that you only ate a stick of lettuce, a stick of celery today. Nobody cares. But I think sometimes when you're in that zone, you're so hungry, you're just like, oh, well, everybody else may as well be miserable because I'm miserable. And it's almost like misery, misery breeds misery, doesn't it? And it just, misery loves company. That's what I was trying to say.
Absolutely. I think that's spot on. And I think, like we said, you don't have afternoon tea very often, because you just cannot make physically. You'd probably want to be sick if you had an afternoon tea every single day of the week. It's a special treat, and therefore you enjoy it. And actually, the food that you're having every day, that's the stuff that builds that variety and what we call nutritional density to your food. So bringing you all the vitamins, minerals, and everything else that you need. So if you go and have something that is largely sugar and not too much carbs, it's okay that you are getting a balance in what you're eating, and that's sustainable.
It is interesting. I mean, just let's touch briefly on kind of sugar addiction. I think that's something personally that I did struggle with, and again, sort of looking at what is in things, and sort of label reading. That's quite interesting to think. Actually, there's way more sugar in things than you think there is, and also the low fat options. I think that's another thing I sort of got from this book as well, is that low fat food, diet food, is really, really, really bad for you. Margarine, I mean, years ago it was butter is bad, but margarine is actually bad. Margarine is so processed, and you're better off having a teaspoon of sugar in your tea than probably sweetener, or better off having butter. So like whole foods, and so again, not demonizing groups, things like sugar or butter or bread or whatever, just a little, but proper.
That's it. Proper and in moderation, which is something like everyone's mother and grandmother's always said, isn't it? Everything in moderation, getting a balance is the way forward if you're going to sustain it. So yeah, absolutely.
It's interesting. Okay, and we're going to talk, we've got a few more minutes after this, and we're going to talk a little bit about neuroscience. Wanting to talk about something that really helped me immensely last year. I discovered something called Slim Pod, and having spent my whole adult life pretty much dieting and demonizing food, Slim Pod for me has really, really helped. And the way it works basically is it's neuroscience. So you're just listening to some pods at night when you're falling asleep. It's as simple as that. And it's working on your subconscious. I don't understand the science behind it. All I know is that it really helped turn off that food noise. I had this constant food noise in my head about what am I going to eat? When am I going to eat? Should I eat that? I don't have that anymore. I feel like for the first time in my adult life, I'm guilt-free with food. So I don't feel there's wrong or right, but I'm also very mindful, and I naturally don't want to eat that stuff anymore because there's something in my brain that has switched. And it has been so useful. And it's also, as you said, about recording wins. So part of the process is, writing down 3 wins of the day. It doesn't have to be food related. It's just about sort of accountability and knowing that you're doing a good job, no matter how hard you are on yourself. Actually, you're doing better than you think. So for me, it was sort of switching off that noise, and it's been absolutely life changing. As I say, someone who has suffered with body dysmorphia, bulimia, and this whole eating thing pretty much my whole adult life, and not being happy with who I was. Now I said last week, I don't own scales, I don't know how much I weigh, and another thing Slim Pod advocates is that you don't weigh yourself, because all that's going to do is just give you a little cortisol spike, and it makes you feel depressed. So for me, that's been really, really helpful, and I know you've been so encouraging of that. And Slim Pod, along with your help, is the thing that reversed my pre-diabetic diagnosis, and and I'm so delighted. And that's something I didn't think I could do. The dietitian recommended I went on to do a keto diet, and I said I can't do keto, it's too extreme. Someone who's got disordered eating, this is not something I can do. And then I found Slim Pod. It was great. And I think it's been very interesting for you, because you hadn't heard of it either, had you?
No, I hadn't worked with anyone that had been using it. And I think what I really saw was, it's coming back to what we spoke about earlier, it's finding that approach that works for you. And it is trial and error, and you'd tried lots of different things in the past, and we had tried different things together as well. But every time that it didn't quite work, we didn't get into a space of going, well, that's useless, what's the point? There was something out there. It was just a question of working out what it is for you that you needed to change. And I think a lot of it is about mindfulness, mindfulness of what you eat, why you eat, when you eat, what triggers that, and not everyone is able to stand back and do that for themselves. So if there is a mechanism such as Slim Pod that really helped you just to get into that space, as you say, where you changed your thought process about food and why you ate and so forth, and that really worked. What I took away from it was the massive positivity that's come with that for you. And we talk, going back to things like tracking, some people really like the tracking, and that is really positive for them because they feel really in control and it really works. For other people, it's a very negative process and they don't get on with it at all. And I think ultimately, if you don't enjoy food, if you don't fuel your body to do all the things you want to do, you're not going to feel well, you're not going to feel great, and it's going to be something that you carry with you as, let's say, a problem that you can't seem to change. So I think when you get into a space where the changes you've made make you feel really positive, and that's what I saw happen with you, is that suddenly, along with Chris's book and everything else, you started to look at what you were eating. You didn't worry about diet options of things and low fat options of things. You started to get all your whole foods into your diet. You were getting lots of colour and variety. You were making things to yourself, like your bread maker and all that. And then suddenly you're just like, you always got kind of zeal for it as well then, that you really want to keep going with this. And that's been so lovely to see, because it's just put everything else also onto a more even keel for you, and you're back to your exercise and your classes and all the things that you've really enjoyed doing, but it's all sort of slotted into a way of life for you that you feel that you can keep going with.
And we're back to that sustainability. Honestly, it's been so lovely. Nutrition is such a massive subject, and I realise that we could probably have another hour talking about it, because it's so interesting, and you could really sort of have a deep dive into all the different sort of macros and proteins and stuff. And it is interesting, but also one can become a little bit obsessive. I'm talking for myself there. But Jo, it's been an absolute pleasure. You've been so helpful. You've been a great guest, but you've been super helpful and supportive over the last couple of years.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely to be here.
And we can contact you on Jo_fitness at home, and on Instagram, and on social media as well.
Yeah,
so
all my website details and everything else are on there as well. So,
and PTs are not just for ladies who lunch.
Or afternoon tea.
Or afternoon tea, exactly. Thank you so much. So I've had a great show. It's been fabulous. Next week, you can contact me on nancy@horizonradio.com if there's anything you want me to talk about. If you want to be a guest, please do let me know, or follow me at _NancyMK_, and I'll be delighted to hear from you. And next week, I'm delighted to be joined by Donna Moore of Donna Moore Holistics, and we're going to be talking about psalm baths, which I've booked on, and I cannot wait. It's going to be lovely. It's a little bit of self-care. But it's been a great show. Thank you so much for listening to the Nancy Stevens Lifestyle Show.